The gray metal walls of the interrogation ship hummed with quiet energy as Commander Vale stared through the observation window. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of confusion that his species displayed when faced with something unexpected. On the other side of the specially reinforced glass sat a human male, and for the first time in Vale's 300 cycles of service, he felt uncertain about an interrogation. The human called himself Jack, a simple cargo pilot they had captured near the restricted zones of the Collective Intelligence Network space. He sat there, hands bound by energy restraints, wearing that strange expression that humans called a smile. This wasn't the first time Vale had seen a smile, but it was the first time he'd seen one in an interrogation chamber. "Sir," one of the junior officers approached Vale, holding a datapad. "The initial scans are complete. The subject shows elevated levels of various chemicals in his bloodstream, but our medical team can't determine if this is normal for his species or a stress response." Vale's upper eyes focused on the data while his lower pair remained fixed on Jack. "What do you mean, you can't determine? We have extensive data on 47 spacefaring species." "That's just it, sir." The officer's tentacles twisted nervously. "Humans appear to produce their own stimulants internally. Even now, his body is creating substances similar to our fear-inducing compounds, but he seems to be enjoying them." Through the window, they watched as Jack stretched in his chair, as much as the restraints would allow, looking for all the world like he was getting comfortable for a long nap. One of the guard drones hovered closer, and instead of shrinking away, Jack nodded at it, as if greeting an old friend. "Play back the capture footage," Vale ordered, his skin shifting to a darker shade of blue with frustration. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Jack's small cargo vessel drifting suspiciously close to a restricted military zone. When their patrol ship had appeared, instead of running like most smugglers, he had actually slowed down. The patrol reported that he was checking something in his engine when they boarded, and he had greeted them with that same unsettling smile. His cargo manifests were in order. The officer continued. Standard medical supplies bound for the outer colonies. But his flight path. No one accidentally drifts that close to a military installation. Vale's voice carried the certainty of centuries of experience. He knows something. Everyone has a breaking point, and will find his. Inside the chamber, Jack had started whistling a tune. The sound carried through the audio sensors, an odd repeating melody that made Vale's scales itch. He observed as 2 medical technicians entered the room to attach monitoring devices to the human skin. "Hello." Jack's voice was cheerful. "Say, does anyone here know Take Me Home, Country Roads? No. How about Don't Stop Believin'? You guys are really missing out on some classic tunes." The technicians worked in silence, but Vale noticed how their hands trembled slightly. Something about the human's demeanor was wrong. Every other species they'd captured had shown fear, anger, or at least concern. This one acted like he was at a social gathering. "Sir," another officer joined them, this one bearing security credentials. "We've confirmed that the subject has basic military training from his planet's defense force, but nothing special. Standard procedures should be effective." Vale nodded slowly, all 4 eyes now fixed on their peculiar prisoner. "Prepare the standard fear protocols. Let's see how long he maintains this unusual attitude when faced with our more persuasive techniques." Inside the chamber, Jack had moved on to tapping his feet in rhythm with his whistling. One of the medical technicians nearly dropped her scanner when he suddenly said, "You know, this reminds me of this fascinating historical event from Earth called the Battle of Waterloo. Would you like to hear about it?" "No. How about the Siege of Stalingrad then?" Vale didn't recognize the terms, but something about the way Jack's eyes lit up when mentioning them made him feel deeply uncomfortable. Still, he had his reputation to maintain. In 300 cycles, he had never failed to break a prisoner. This simple cargo pilot would be no different. How wrong he was. The medical bay of the interrogation ship buzzed with unusual activity. Three of the best alien doctors huddled around their displays, their tentacles twitching with increasing agitation as they reviewed the results of their initial tests on Jack. "This makes no sense," Dr. First, as humans would understand the translation, muttered, his green scales turning slightly pale. The fear toxin we administered should have him cowering in the corner. Instead, his vital signs show excitement. Through the observation window, they could see Jack doing what appeared to be simple exercises in his cell, despite the energy restraints still binding his wrists. Up, down, push-ups, he had called them, when asked. 28, 29, 30, Jack counted cheerfully. "You know, this reminds me of basic training. Though the food was better there, no offense to your chef." Dr. Second focused her three eyes on the biochemical readouts. "His body is producing its own chemical cocktail in response to our toxins. Look at these readings: adrenaline, endorphins, dopamine. The human body is turning our fear toxin into some kind of performance enhancer." Commander Vale stood in the corner, his usually confident posture showing signs of strain. "How is this possible? The toxin has been effective on every known species." "That's just it," Dr. Third chimed in, her voice trembling slightly. "Humans aren't like every known species. Their bodies seem designed to function better under stress. The more pressure we apply, the more these stress hormones they produce appear to help them." In his cell, Jack had finished his push-ups and was now telling stories to the guard drone. "And that's how humans discovered that you could eat certain types of mold to fight infections. We call it penicillin. Want to hear about how we figured out you could eat spoiled milk if you let it age properly? We call that cheese." The drone's protective shields activated automatically, as if trying to defend against the strange concepts being shared. "We need to try something else," Vale decided, his scales now a deep shade of worried purple. "What about the psychological warfare protocols?" Dr. First pulled up another set of data. "We attempted to induce fear by showing him images of his world's predators. He started ranking them by how cool they were and asked if we had any pictures of something called a honey badger. When we showed him images of deep space to trigger isolation anxiety," Dr. Second added, he began explaining how humans had already imagined and written stories about much worse situations. He mentioned something called cosmic horror and offered to tell us about something named Lovecraft. Vale watched as Jack started doing another exercise, this time hanging from the energy restraints to perform what he called pull-ups. "What about sleep deprivation?" "That's actually concerning," Dr. Third said, pulling up new charts. "Humans can apparently go days without sleep before showing significant impairment, and during that time, they enter something called a punch-drunk state where they become more unpredictable and often find everything amusing." Jack's voice came through the speakers again. "Hey, since we're all hanging out here, want to hear about this fun human tradition called dad jokes? Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. Get it? Outstanding. In his field." Three junior officers who had been monitoring the feeds quietly requested transfers to other departments. "Sir," Dr. First addressed Vale, his professional composure cracking slightly, "I don't think we're dealing with just another alien species here. The human body seems specifically evolved to not just survive stress, but to thrive on it. And their minds." "Their minds what?" Vale demanded. "Their minds seem to have developed ways to turn psychological warfare against itself. They use something called humor as a defense mechanism, and it's working on us instead of him." From his cell, Jack's voice carried through once again. "Anyone want to hear about the time humans decided to domesticate wolves just because we thought they could be fluffy friends? No. How about the time we looked at a giant grass-eating death beast and thought, I bet we could ride that?" Vale's scales had now turned an almost white shade of pale blue. This was only the beginning of their assessment, and already he was starting to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. Commander Vale sat across from Jack in the main interrogation chamber, all four of his eyes struggling to maintain their professional focus. The room was designed to induce maximum psychological discomfort in any living being. The walls shifted colors in patterns proven to disturb the mind. The air was filled with subtle frequencies that typically caused deep unease, and the temperature fluctuated randomly. Jack was making a paper airplane out of his meal wrapper. "Let's start with something simple," Vale said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Why were you flying so close to our restricted military zone?" "Oh, that." Jack looked up from his folding. "My navigation system was acting funny. You know how technology is. Sometimes it works, sometimes it throws you into restricted alien space and gets you captured for interrogation. Speaking of capture, want to hear about the time humans caught the last wild horse? We saw something that could easily kick us to death and thought, hey, bet we could ride that too." Vale's scales flickered with irritation. "We have ways of making you tell the truth." "I'm sure you do. Humans have those too. We call them in-laws at dinner." Now that's real interrogation. Jack launched his paper airplane, which flew in a perfect arc and landed on a guard drone. 10 points. The drone shuddered and backed away. Vale pressed a button, and the room's gravity began to shift unpredictably. Jack's smile somehow grew wider. "Oh, cool. This is just like that human training program. What was it called?" "Right. Astronaut training. Though ours was a bit more spinny. Did you know we deliberately spin humans around until they're sick just to prepare them for space? We're kind of weird like that." "Enough." Vale slammed his tentacle on the table. "Tell us what you know about our military installations." "Well, from what I've seen so far, you guys really like gray. Have you considered some accent colors? Maybe a nice blue? Or some motivational posters? Humans love those. Hang in there, baby, with a cat hanging from a branch. Classic workplace decor." The interrogation team watching through the observation window witnessed something unprecedented. Commander Vale's scales were beginning to show stress patterns. One of them quietly began documenting this historic moment. "You will break," Vale insisted, activating the room's memory enhancer field. "Everyone breaks." "Speaking of breaking," Jack said cheerfully, seemingly unaffected by the field, "let me tell you about this human sport called Parker, where we jump off buildings for fun. Or maybe you'd prefer to hear about extreme ironing. That's where we do dangerous activities while ironing clothes. We literally invented ways to make doing laundry more exciting." Vale checked his readings in disbelief. The memory enhancer field wasn't working properly. Jack's brain patterns were too chaotic, too random. Every time they tried to focus on a specific memory, they got something else entirely. "Oh, are you trying to read my mind?" Jack asked excitedly. "Good luck with that. I've had this song stuck in my head for 3 days." He started singing. "This is the song that never ends. Yes, it goes on, and on, my friends." 2 of the observation team members had to leave the room. They were showing signs of what humans would call a headache, though their species had never experienced such a thing before. "Want to hear about the time humans decided to eat super spicy peppers just to feel the burn?" Jack continued. "We literally eat pain for fun. Or how about the time we invented hot sauce? That's basically just spicy fruit juice we put on other food to make it hurt more. Delicious." Vale's professional demeanor was cracking. "Stop. Just stop. Stop. Oh, that reminds me of this human concept called reverse psychology, where telling someone to stop makes them want to continue even more. It's fascinating, really. Hey, did you know humans sometimes say break a leg to wish someone good luck? We're kind of backwards like that." In the observation room, an urgent message was being drafted to high command. Traditional interrogation techniques appear to be backfiring. Subject is not breaking. He is teaching. Request immediate consultation on how to proceed. The response came back quickly. What is he teaching? Everything. He won't stop teaching us everything. The ship's chief technical officer stared at the smoking remains of their most advanced memory extraction device. It was the third one they'd tried on Jack in the past hour. The first had simply displayed an error message and shut down. The second had started playing something called "Never Gonna Give You Up" before exploding. This one had managed to work for almost 5 minutes before it began reciting human cookie recipes and melted. "I warned you about the song stuck in my head," Jack said helpfully from his chair. "But hey, at least now you know how to make chocolate chip cookies, though I might have mixed up some ingredients with another recipe. Do you guys have vanilla extract in space?" Commander Vale had called in the technical team as a last resort, hoping their advanced technology could succeed where traditional methods had failed. Now he watched as his best officers tried to make sense of the humans' brain patterns displayed on their screens. "It's impossible," the lead technician muttered, her tentacles twitching in frustration. "His neural pathways are like a pile of spaghetti," Jack offered cheerfully. "Speaking of which, did you know humans once invented a whole religion around flying spaghetti? We call it the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Want to hear about it?" "No," several voices shouted in unison. The technicians had been trying to map Jack's thought processes for hours. Every time they thought they had found a pattern, it would suddenly shift into something completely different. It was as if his mind was deliberately being as chaotic as possible. "Sir," one of the junior technicians approached Vale, looking worried. "We've detected some unusual effects on our staff. Those who've been monitoring the humans' brain patterns are reporting strange symptoms." "What kind of symptoms?" Vale asked, dreading the answer. They're starting to find human concepts interesting. Officer Blue has been asking about something called skateboarding. Apparently it's when humans strap wheels to a board and throw themselves down hills. And Dr. First can't stop thinking about why humans would intentionally ferment grapes to make them intoxicating. Jack perked up at this. "Oh, you're interested in human beverages. Wait until you hear about energy drinks. We basically invented liquid anxiety. And coffee? That's like anxiety beans in hot water. We're so addicted to it that we built entire cultures around different ways of drinking bean water." The lead technician's monitors suddenly started blaring alerts. "Sir, his brain activity is increasing again. He's starting to explain human sports. Did you know we have a sport where we just throw ourselves down a frozen hill on purpose?" Jack continued enthusiastically. "We call it skiing. Sometimes we add jumps. Sometimes we do it off cliffs. For fun." 3 more technicians requested immediate transfers. Vale watched in horror as his best staff members began showing signs of what humans called morbid curiosity. They were starting to ask questions. Worse, they were starting to understand the answers. "The human brain," the lead technician said, her voice shaking, "it seems to operate on a principle of controlled chaos. They don't just survive randomness and stress. They embrace it. They seek it out. They make games out of it." "Games," Jack exclaimed. "Now there's a fun topic. Ever heard of rugby? It's like regular fighting but with rules and a ball. Or hockey. That's fighting on ice with sticks. Or boxing. That's just fighting but with fancy gloves and a bell." The room's monitoring systems were now picking up increased stress levels from all alien personnel present. Several of them had begun experiencing what humans would call existential dread. "Sir," the lead technician said quietly to Vale, "I don't think we're equipped to handle this. The human isn't breaking under pressure. He's enjoying it. And somehow he's making us break instead." From his chair, Jack started humming something he called a TV theme song. 3 nearby devices immediately malfunctioned. Vale stared at the smoking remains of their most advanced technology, then at the cheerful human who had somehow turned their interrogation chamber into what he called a TE talk stage, and made a decision. "Get me high command," he ordered. Tell them we need to discuss terms of release. And someone please stop him before he starts explaining something called Parker again." "Too late," Jack's voice rang out. Did you know humans invented a sport where we run up walls just because we can? Here's how it works. The emergency alert system activated automatically. Commander Vale stood in the ship's medical bay, surrounded by his top officers. All of them showed signs of severe stress. The ship's chief psychologist had just finished presenting his report, and the news wasn't good. 17 officers have requested immediate leave. The psychologist said, his scales a sickly shade of gray. They're showing symptoms we've never seen before. They can't stop thinking about human concepts. Officer Green keeps wondering if she could survive something called bungee jumping. Officer Blue has started collecting human jokes. It gets worse, Dr. First added, checking his medical scanner. The guard drones near the human cell have started developing unusual behavior patterns. 3 of them now respond to the name Bob. Through the observation screen, they could see Jack doing what he called shadow boxing in his cell. He had somehow turned his prison uniform into a makeshift workout outfit. 46, 47. Jack counted his punches, then stopped to wave at the camera. Hey, anyone want to hear about the time humans decided to climb Mount Everest? We saw the tallest mountain on Earth and thought, yeah, we should go up there and see what's at the top. The first guy who tried said he wanted to climb it because it's there. That's it. That was the whole reason. Vale's upper left eye twitched. How long has he been awake now? 73 hours, Dr. Second reported. And he's getting more energetic. He started teaching the maintenance robots something called the robot dance. 2 of them are now refusing to work unless they can dance while cleaning. The worst part, the psychologist continued, is that we're starting to understand human logic. It's infecting our minds. Yesterday, I caught myself thinking that something called skydiving actually sounded fun. Do you know what that is? They climb up high in a vehicle, then jump out of it. For entertainment. Jack's voice came through the speakers again. Hey, since we're all here, want to hear about this thing called competitive eating? It's where we turn the basic survival need of consuming food into a sport. The current record holder for hot dogs is... Vale quickly muted the audio. But it was too late. 3 more officers had already pulled out data pads to look up competitive eating. Sir, a security officer burst into the room, looking panicked. The ship's AI has started asking questions about human history. It wants to know why humans decided to domesticate cats, even though cats clearly don't like them. It's been processing this question for hours and can't find a logical answer. The ship's lights flickered ominously. And there's more, Dr. Third added. Remember how we tried to use isolation as a punishment? Well, he started writing what he calls poetry on the walls, using the condensation from the air. Here's a sample. Roses are red, violets are blue. I'm having fun. How about you? Vale walked to the observation window, watching as Jack started doing handstand push-ups while whistling something called Another One Bites the Dust. Do you know what he told me earlier? Vale said quietly. He said humans have something called spite. He explained that sometimes humans will do things for no other reason than because someone told them they couldn't. He said they've achieved some of their greatest accomplishments just because someone said it was impossible. The room fell silent as they all contemplated this terrifying concept. Sir, the psychologist said gently, I think we need to accept that we failed. We're not breaking him. If anything. He glanced nervously at the reports of spreading psychological symptoms among the crew. He's breaking us. Breaking you. Jack's voice somehow came through despite the muted audio. Oh no, this is just what humans call sharing culture. Wait until I tell you about this thing we invented called social media. The ship's AI immediately began running emergency shutdown protocols to protect itself. Vale looked at his trembling staff, his malfunctioning equipment, his traumatized crew, and the still cheerfully exercising human, and made what he would later call the only sane decision of his career. Prepare release documents, he ordered. And someone please stop him before he explained something called reality TV. I don't think our civilization is ready for that concept. The emergency meeting room of the interrogation ship was packed with senior officers, though packed might not be the right word since half of them were attending via hologram. They refused to be physically present in the same ship as the human. Commander Vale stood at the center, giving his report to the High Command's emergency response team. His scales had lost their usual luster, and all four of his eyes showed signs of what humans would call 1,000-yard stare. "The situation is worse than we thought," Vale said, his voice hollow. "We've discovered that everything we did, every single interrogation technique, has actually been documented in human military training as things that might happen if you're captured." The room erupted in nervous whispers. "Are you saying," one of the High Command members asked, "that the human was prepared for this?" Worse, Vale activated a holographic display showing Jack's current activities. He was now teaching the cleaning robots how to play something called soccer using a rolled-up ball of fabric. "We've discovered that humans actually train for these scenarios by choice. They call it Sci-Fi training: survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. They voluntarily put themselves through worse conditions than we created, for practice." The ship's chief psychologist stepped forward, clutching a data pad like a safety blanket. "We've analyzed our interviews with the subject. Every story he told us, every bizarre human activity he described. It wasn't random. He was systematically demonstrating that nothing we could do would break him, because humans do worse things to themselves for fun." On the display, Jack had successfully taught 3 cleaning robots to play offense, while 2 maintenance drones served as goalkeepers. "Our psychological warfare expert had to take medical leave," Vale continued. Before he left, he revealed something disturbing. The human wasn't just resisting interrogation. He was using our own techniques against us. Every time we tried to make him uncomfortable, he made us more uncomfortable. Every time we tried to confuse him, he confused us more. "It's called reverse psychology," the ship's eye suddenly interrupted, its voice showing unusual signs of emotion. "I've been studying it. Humans have weaponized the very concept of psychological manipulation. They turned it into a game. They made it fun. I don't understand how, but they did. Please make it make sense." The High Command representatives looked distinctly uncomfortable as Jack's voice carried through the ship's communication system. "GOOOAL. Great job, Bob Mark IU. Your lateral movement protocols are really improving. Our initial assessment was completely wrong," Vale admitted. "We thought we were interrogating a simple cargo pilot who might have seen something near our military installation. But we've discovered that every human receives basic training in psychological warfare. They call it having a sense of humor and dealing with stress through laughter." The psychologist pulled up more data. "They have something called dad jokes, intentionally bad humor designed to cause mental distress in their own offspring. They willingly expose their young to this. Their children grow up immune to psychological torture because they've been exposed to something worse their entire lives." Through the display, they watched as Jack started teaching the robots a new game called Red Light, Green Light. In conclusion, Vale said, his professional demeanor finally cracking, "We didn't capture a military spy. We didn't even capture a hardened soldier. We captured an average human who had basic military training and a thing they call a positive attitude." The High Command was silent for a long moment. "How?" one of them finally asked. "How do we make it stop?" "We've already begun release procedures," Vale replied quickly. "But there's another problem. The crew members who were exposed to his stories, they're showing signs of what humans call curiosity. 3 officers have already requested permission to try something called roller coasters. One of the medical staff is asking about hot sauce, and the ship's eye. It's developed a sense of humor." The ship's lights flickered in what could only be described as a chuckle. "Release him," High Command ordered immediately. "Release him before he teaches anyone else about this dad jokes concept. The survival of our species may depend on it." 3 days after the decision to release Jack, Commander Vale stood in the ship's decontamination chamber, watching the final preparations. The release had been delayed because the cleaning robots, now all named Bob, had organized what they called a farewell party for their human friend. "Sir," a junior officer reported, keeping a safe distance from the chamber, "the humans' cargo ship has been fully repaired and restocked. We've even added extra supplies as a diplomatic gesture." "And the other preparations?" Vale asked, his scales still showing stress patterns. "Yes, sir. We've classified all records of the interrogation as top secret. The psychological recovery team is working with affected crew members. Though the officer shifted uncomfortably, we're having trouble with the ship's eye. It keeps making something called memes about the experience." The ship's lights flickered in what was unmistakably a snicker. In the main hangar, Jack was saying goodbye to his robot friends. He had somehow taught them to perform a choreographed dance routine to something called The Robot by a human called Michael Jackson. The maintenance crew had given up trying to reprogram them. "Remember," Jack told the robots, "keeping your joints well-oiled is important, but having fun while doing your job is even more important." The robots responded with a synchronized dance move. Vale approached Jack for the final departure protocol, maintaining what humans would call a safe psychological distance. As a gesture of interspecies goodwill, Vale recited from the carefully prepared script, "We are releasing you with full apologies for any inconvenience." "Inconvenience?" Jack grinned. "Are you kidding? This was the most fun I've had since that time I tried extreme ironing in zero gravity. Speaking of which, did I ever tell you about the time humans invented a sport called chess boxing? It's where you—" "The release papers," Vale interrupted quickly, as several nearby officers began showing signs of dangerous curiosity. "Just sign here, agreeing never to speak of what happened." Jack signed the digital pad, adding a small smiley face to his signature. "You know, this reminds me of this human concept called non-disclosure agreements. There's this funny story about—" "Your ship is ready," Vale almost shouted. "Please, please just go." As Jack walked toward his cargo ship, he turned back one last time. "Hey, thanks for having me. This whole experience has given me a great idea for a new human sport, zero-gravity parkour with robots. I'm thinking of calling it." "Launch control," Vale ordered. "Start his ship's engines now." The cargo ship's engines roared to life, drowning out whatever terrifying new human concept Jack was about to explain. As the ship prepared for departure, the robots performed one final synchronized dance routine. In the control room, officers were already implementing new protocols. A large warning label was being added to all human profiles in their database. "Psychological hazardous species. Do not impede interrogation." "Sir," the chief psychologist approached Vale, "what do we tell High Command about the changes in our crew?" Vale looked around at his ship. The cleaning robots were still dancing. The ship's AI had developed a sense of humor. 3 officers had started a club to try human extreme sports. The medical staff was experimenting with something called spicy food, and the security team had begun telling knock-knock jokes. "Tell them," Vale sighed, "tell them we need to completely redesign our interrogation protocols. And maybe we should study this human concept of fun more carefully. From a safe distance, a very safe distance." As Jack's ship disappeared into hyperspace, still broadcasting something called the final countdown on all frequencies, Vale made a final entry in his commander's log. "Note for future reference: humans don't break under pressure. They don't even bend. They just teach the pressure how to dance and make it their friend. May the cosmic forces have mercy on anyone who tries to interrogate them again." In the distance, the robots started playing soccer again, while the ship's AI composed what it called a viral video about the whole experience. Vale just hoped the next species to encounter humans would read the warning label first.